So I wrote this forever ago, but I never actually made a video on this, and I'm not entirely sure why, because this, if you look at the view count, ended up being the most popular article I've ever written. Because, of course, it's about a hot topic, abortion. And I figure it's time to make a video about this because I see people arguing, and I hate to get involved in a topic like abortion, especially with libertarians, because it is rarely productive. For the following reasons that I'll go through here. So what I kind of want to address is the misconception that libertarianism as a philosophy has one view on abortion. And for the most part, if you subscribe to an ideology, there is one view that ideology has on said topic. But when it comes to the topic of abortion, oddly enough, you can actually justify it from both from a libertarian perspective in either direction based on what you believe. If you're pro-life, using what you believe as someone that's pro-life, you can be a pro-life libertarian, and the same thing goes for pro-choice, because the fundamental difference between, again, like the pro-life and the pro-choice people, libertarianism doesn't take a specific side on that. And if you're saying you disagree, I'm going to go through why and explain what they view, because I keep seeing both libertarians and non-libertarians say, this is the position that we have to take, and libertarians cannot be pro-life or pro-choice, and I disagree with that. So I'm going to go through this and clear this up for people. So, hence the title of the article, Misconceptions of the Libertarian View of Abortion. And I'm just going to say I am personally pro-life, so there is my bias here. I am pro-life, and I don't even know anything more specific than that, because I'm just more, whatever results in the, fewer abortions, that's what I want, generally. So we're going to go through this here. The first position, are they pro-life or pro-choice? Well, if you poll libertarians, you'll find that it is actually split quite evenly. 50-50, 60-40 in either direction. The one I cited was a Being Libertarian poll, because that's what this article is on. It came out to 58% being pro-life, 42% being pro-choice. And I've seen plenty of polls in the opposite direction, where it's 60-40 in the opposite direction. So we can roughly say it's about 50-50, depending on which group you poll. But there's another poll from isidewith.com that has a large pool of different people to choose from, a large pool of data. They showed 55% of libertarians being pro-choice and 29% being pro-life, and the 16% was the supposedly centrist position, which, in my opinion, I side with, rightfully put under as like a subset of being pro-choice. So I'm going to show the 4 different positions here. I'm actually going to attack one of the positions, but I'm going to first address that it actually exists. So the official Libertarian Party platform is that it is neutral, the centrist position, the one that I'm not really a fan of, that I will explain why later, that you can be, whether or not you're personally pro-life or pro-choice, you don't want the government to get involved. So that's that's generally what most people think the actual position is of most libertarians, considering that's the Libertarian Party position. But if you're a libertarian or you know anything about libertarianism, you know that most libertarians don't actually like the party, so there's a lot to earn from that. So first position, the pro-life libertarian. That's how I usually describe myself. So this position I will best be able to interpret. That's the one that says the fetus has human rights. The fetus has property rights, the right to self-ownership, the rights that libertarians believe in, that they are an actual individual with all rights of the individual. They have individual rights, and therefore, the woman does not. It is not part of the woman's body. It is a separate form, and therefore you can't abort it. Now that's pretty much the same position as non-libertarian pro-lifers, but where it becomes specific is taking that self-ownership approach. That even though they cannot consent, they still have self-ownership. They would argue that even if the child is occupying a woman's body, the woman has no right to abort the child, since it was the actions of the child's parents and not any choice of the child that resulted in the child occupying the mother's womb. So there was a contract between a male and a female that resulted in conception. And even if there was contraception or any other kind of thing, there's still that inherent risk. Like if I make a decision and there is an 80% chance that what I want will happen, and a 20% chance that what I don't want will happen, and I take that. If I don't get what I want, if I get that 20% that I didn't want, I still, like, that's still my responsibility. I still entered into this action with the understanding that there was a result, that this was a possible result. So, let's say it's the whole, you're not trying to get pregnant, but you end up, like, the contraception fails, and you get pregnant. You still entered into that action with the understanding that that was some inevitable possibility, that was a possibility there. So you've pretty much conceived a child, whether you liked it or not, and the child had no way to consent being born or to consent being conceived, because again, they weren't actually, like, they weren't even in existence to consent such a thing. Therefore, it was a third part, like, that's how they resulted. But you can't actually just say, like, okay, well, to just abort them. You can't, because they have human rights in that respect. So the popular analogy of, like, the whole fetus is a parasite thing, of how even though they have self-ownership, why can't you just, like, they are encroaching on the life of the mother. They are taking the mother's resources, and the mother has to continue doing things for 9 months, has to continue providing energy and resources and to this child to allow it to develop. So they can say, why can't you abort it? Because they are taking something from the mother. Well, I mean, the general opinion is, like, again, that's something that when you have sex, you generally, it is understood that if conception happens, that is something that happens. Like, they're fully aware that when something happens, that's the result. So when you engage in something, you can't say, like, oh, dang, the guy never knew about these consequences. Well, you did. You obviously understood that those were the consequences. But then the analogy is, I've seen, I think I originally heard this from Tom Woods, I believe. An analogy made by pro-life libertarians involves an individual with a private plane, and there's also, like, private helicopter, but some kind of, like, private property that is a vehicle that can go up in the air, offering a ride to one of his friends who accepts the offer. So, I own a helicopter, I have a friend, I say, like, hey, you want to take a ride in my helicopter? The helicopter is my property. I take the person up several hundred feet up in the air with a helicopter. The owner of the plane does not have the right to suddenly order his passenger off his property while the plane is several thousand feet in the air. So if you're at a certain point where getting out will cause the person death, you can't suddenly say, get off my property. Like, libertarians understand that you can tell someone, get off my property. You have the right to do that. But you don't have that right when getting off that property would kill that person, and you were the one responsible for putting them there in the first place. That's the pro-life position, that yes, you can say get off your property, but you can't kidnap someone and then say get off your property in a way that will kill them. Like, you can't take someone up in your private plane or helicopter and then say get off my property, because that will kill them, and you were responsible for putting them there in the first place. So that is the pro-life libertarian position, and as far as I've just described, like, it's something that doesn't run into any kind of conflicts with libertarianism as a whole. And then this is actually my attack on the centrist position there is, which I'll get to later. The pro-life libertarians generally believe you can legislate against it. Government can regulate it. Now, again, there's the whole thing of does regulating it, does banning it actually lead to fewer abortions? That's a whole different question. But the idea that you can't legislate is to say, I'm personally against murder, but it's no business of the government to ban it. We would never accept that. Like, libertarians are fine with making it illegal to murder people. Like, we don't take the position, oh, well, we're going to leave murder up to the states. We're going to leave rape up to the states. No, like, libertarians say, okay, if it violates the non-aggression principle, government is allowed to ban it. So that's the general, that's why they're fine with government regulating that. Or banning it, because again, it's kind of like, if you believe abortion is murder, then it's not hypocritical at all as a libertarian to say, I think murder should be illegal. So then on to the pro-choice libertarian position, which again, if you think as I go through this, if you think I have incorrectly stated your position, please clear it up in the comment section. Though this article has gotten over 16,000 reads, and I've got loads of feedback from people saying, like, hey, you've accurately described my position, and there's loads of sources, as you can see. All the yellow are sources that you can then click on, and the article is in the description if you want to follow that along. But all I can say is, this position I am not too as familiar with as I am with my own positions, because obviously they are my own positions. But the pro-choice libertarian opposes the idea that a fetus is entitled to the same right to liberty that the mother has, and therefore forcing a woman to carry a child is denying her the right to self-ownership and control over her own body. So they take the generic, like, pro-choice position that the fetus is not an individual. It does not have individual rights. It is something that is part of the mother up until birth, up until wherever you draw that line. So they can say, yeah, you can abort it because it's the generic pro-choice position that the child does not have the right to self-ownership. It is part of the mother. Therefore, if you were to force your opinion on that, if you were to say, like, hey, you're not allowed to do that, you would be anti-libertarian in the sense of forcing your views or forcing your own decisions on someone's right to use their own body. So again, if the fetus is part of the woman's body, the woman has every right to say, I'm going to do whatever I want with my own body. And that goes with the libertarian view. And again, for those that would say you can't be pro-choice and libertarian, as I'll criticize the people that say pro-choice, you can't be pro-life and libertarian, just as much as I'm going to criticize the people that say you can't be pro-choice and libertarian, because I see both of these positions can be logically arrived at, even though I think one is wrong. But Murray Rothbard himself, Mr. Libertarian, as he put it, no being has a right to live unbidden as a parasite within or upon some person's body. Now, I disagree with that, but that's the general argument from the pro-choice perspective, that no being has the right to live as part of another, or to be reliant on another human being. Again, I disagree with that, but it does have an internal logic to it. Because women have this right, pro-choice libertarians declare government restriction of abortion to be a violation of the non-aggression principle. Again, if you don't believe that abortion is murder, then yes, it is authoritarian to force, for the pro-life people to force their views on the pro-choice people. If it's something that, if it's down to like opinion, or if it's down to just, if it really is just down to opinion, then it is a violation of, then libertarians can't force their view on other people. So that's the pro-choice position. To support government action against abortion would be equivalent to legislating morality and personal beliefs, a role that government should not have. So it is internally consistent. Again, I disagree with the idea that a fetus is part of the mother and not a separate entity with its own rights. But if you agree, if you hold that pro-choice position, then you can be a libertarian. You can be a pro-choice libertarian. Again, I'm going to say they're wrong, but I'm not going to say you're not a real libertarian. And as we've seen in the polls earlier, loads of people hold this position. The personally pro-life, but it's not my business libertarian. So this is a less popular view, but I'm going to criticize. I'm going to say it exists because it does exist. I'm going to point that out, that people believe this stuff. Like, loads of libertarians hold this position, but I will also criticize it while I'm here. The less popular view, depending on who you ask, is considered either a middle ground or a subset of the pro-choice view. These libertarians side with the pro-choice crowd in opposing the idea that abortion is equivalent to murder and therefore not a human rights issue, but are not supportive of it as an option they would consider for themselves. So my issue with that is again, if you're pro-life, you believe that abortion is murder, that aborting a fetus is equivalent to murder. So then, again, I have to say, do you hold that same position of, well, I mean, I'm personally against murder, but I don't want the government to make murder illegal. That's how it comes across to me as a pro-life libertarian. That seems kind of hypocritical. Like, if you're pro-life, you should be fine with the government banning it. And if you're pro-choice, you should be against the idea of the government banning it. But I have an issue reconciling that position. But I am gonna just, for the sake of pointing this out, libertarians do believe this. Like, there is a certain subset of libertarians that believe this. And then there's evictionism, which I don't necessarily agree with, but it's an interesting concept. I really do think it's interesting enough that you should give it attention. You should really take the time to think through it. It's put forth by Walter Block and Roy Whitehead. Evictionism acts as a compromise to the debate by separating abortion into two parts: eviction, which is the idea of removing the fetus from the womb, and murder. So this is something that I can understand that perspective, and I do like that evictionism tries to reconcile the two positions. Like, okay, like maybe there's a way we can meet in the middle. And I at least appreciate that perspective, even though I don't know if I necessarily agree with it. I'm not even saying I disagree with it. It's something I'm still juggling. It's something I'm still thinking about, despite hearing about this like years ago. But Block and Whitehead argue that a woman has the right to evict the fetus, but not to terminate it if it's possible for the fetus to exist outside the womb with the help of medical technology. So, to give the analogy of, can you force someone off your property if doing so will kill them? No, you can't do that. Like, you can tell people, get off my property, but you can't do that when you're up in the air, and forcing them off your property would kill them. So that's how they separate it. They say, you have the right to tell people to get off your property, but you don't have the right to do that when doing that would kill them. So they say basically, if you get pregnant, then it is your responsibility to carry that baby up until the point that you can remove it without killing it. So you can remove it from your body, but you can't kill it. That's the general point. So over time, like we are approaching this now, where we can keep babies alive at earlier and earlier. We have artificial, or at least we're working on, I believe, artificial wombs. We have different ways of keeping a fetus alive way before it is ready to be like born. And the interesting thing is, over time, that point of technology, like that point between aborting it would kill it and aborting it would keep it alive, sorry, let me rephrase that. The point at which removing it from the body would kill it, and removing it from the body and putting it in using technology to keep it alive, that point will get closer and closer and closer to conception over time. So that does kind of appease pro-life libertarians that over time that'll get better. And it's something that I disagree with, the idea that the woman has the right to remove it from her own body. I kind of disagree with that. But again, I can understand, what do I want in terms of a pragmatic manner? What do I want? Do I want a child to be aborted, or do I want a child to be placed in a artificial womb that'll keep them alive? I think an artificial womb is nowhere near as good as like the natural womb. But again, if it comes down to if this system of evictionism results in fewer abortions, I would be tentative to support it. I would want to support it. But they point out that, yeah, basically, simple as you don't have a right to kill your baby, but if you want to place it in an artificial womb, that is fine, because the woman has the right to do that from the pro-choice position, but from the pro-life position, they don't have the right to kill it. So hopefully that makes sense. It's an interesting thought. Again, it's something I can explain. I don't know if I really agree with it, but it's worth thinking about. It's an interesting idea. But hopefully this clears this up, because that was my whole point of this. The whole point of this video is just to say there are multiple positions, and these are the defenses for that position. And whether you agree with them or not, they do have a logic to them that is not contradictory with libertarianism. So if you're not, like, this video was not meant specifically for libertarians, it's more just meant for people that were interested in finding out what they actually believe on this topic. Because it's down to, I don't like I don't like the accusation of, you're not a real libertarian, as an argument. I think that's a stupid argument. Like, if someone tells me I'm not a real libertarian, I do not care in the slightest. Like, for one, I don't care about your position, or I don't care about your opinion of what a libertarian is, or what a libertarian is. And two, if you say I'm not a real libertarian, it's like, well, am I wrong? Because, like, it is possible. I do think in certain circumstances there are times where libertarianism and truth might be two separate things. I think they're pretty much the same thing in a lot of ways, but in certain circumstances there can be ways, as like certain, for example, on the issue of borders. I am pretty much, I don't think I'm a what they would call a bordertarian. I am not for open borders, and I do think open borders is the libertarian position, but I disagree with that. In that sense, if you're going to say you're not a real libertarian, I don't care. Am I wrong or am I right? That's all I care about. Like, if you're telling me that my position isn't libertarian, it's like, okay, well, tell me why it's wrong. That's all I care about. But yeah, the point of this video is just to say, like, hey, believe it or not, libertarians are quite divided on this issue, and to say that, and they have their own internal logic to them that I have to at least acknowledge. I think the pro-choice libertarians are wrong in being pro-choice. I don't think they're wrong in that they can't call themselves libertarians or something like that. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments section. Like the video if you enjoyed. Subscribe for more. Share this around. Send this video to someone who is very dogmatic on the person that disagrees with me isn't a real libertarian because they disagree with me on abortion. My point was just to say, I think you can, there's a reason that this issue is pretty well divided between libertarians, like pretty 50-50, 60-40, depending on what you look at. And it's because you can justify it in both ways. You can take that position as a libertarian in both directions. Now, again, I'm pro-life, but I at least just wanted to point that out. But yeah, like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe for more, and thanks for watching.